Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out to Bear Nation for tuning in for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship, a podcast for the entrepreneur-minded, created by entrepreneurs, discussing the real stories that give you the tools to overcome challenges and stay true to your real self. As always, I want to give a shout out to our partners over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. We've teamed up with Fin to give back to the communities that we serve. For every episode, we will be donating $10 to the cause of choosing by our guest in the Fin platform. Enjoy today's episode. Hey Bear Nation, how we doing? It's your host, Rob Napoli, back again for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship podcast. And today, we're going to be talking with Sarah Allali, who is the CEO and co-founder of Think Confluent. And Sarah is somebody that I met almost 2 years ago. I think it was just over 2 years ago. She attended a workshop that I did. We connected, we set up a call, learned a little bit about each other, stayed in touch, following along with what they were doing. They were in the early days, building product market fit. And then it kind of went quiet for a little bit. Then we resurfaced at an event together for the South European Startup Awards for the CISA organization, reconnected then. And then earlier this year, she was in a, I think it was a WeWork or something workshop that I was doing that we reconnected. She's also involved in the Founder Boost community, which is a community that I'm a part of, formerly Startup Boost. So we've been circling each other for 2 years now. So it just made sense for us to get on the phone again and chat and really talk about entrepreneurship, because where Think Confluent was when we first met 2 years ago to where it is today, very different places. So I'm excited to be chatting with her today. She is a former neuroscientist. She used to work at she's an ex-Airbnb-er. She turned to entrepreneurship and had 2 startups that actually failed and has overcome a lot to learn to be now on her 3rd startup with her Think Confluent. And the common thread in all of her experiences really have been to help people not compromise on what they need or who they are at work, which is something we'll definitely get into. So Sarah, say hi to Bear Nation for me.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Rob. Really, really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's been a long time that we've known each other and following along.
Yeah.
To kind of kick things off, in the intro I said, well, one, former neuroscientist, ex-Airbnb-er, how the hell did you get into entrepreneurship? So walk me through a little bit, the quick version of your entrepreneurial journey. How did you start going in as a scientist to working at Airbnb and then turning that into being an entrepreneur? What's that journey like?
Yeah, a pretty crazy journey here. Basically, the entrepreneurship wasn't really in my career plan, really. Once a time at the high school, I had courses around neuroscience, how the brain is working, and philosophy, and I just fall in love with these 2 courses, really. So first of all, I decided to be a doctor, and to be precise, like a neurologist. But I definitely failed my studies. There's a really critical exam here in France when you want to be a doctor, and I failed it twice. So at the end, I was pretty lost. The only thing I knew was that I wanted to work around the neuroscience area, and I wanted to make something which has a real impact. I'm not really into bullshit thing, etc. So I really wanted to do something that just is useful, So I decided to do a neuroscience bachelor and master's degree, where I definitely dropped out because I didn't enjoy it at all. And it was very academic focused studies. But at the end, I was really interested in just how the brain was working, just discovering it. I find it was really mysterious, So yeah, at the end of my studies, the only thing that I knew was that I wanted to do something still related to neuroscience, but not in the lab at all. I hate everything related to academical research or whatever. I'm not patient enough for that. So I had this crazy idea of making something big, helping people who had Alzheimer or building like brain shape or really crazy like that.
Yeah.
Really non-feasible for my stage. So I just let my idea just rest a little bit, and then I work at Airbnb first at a little company called Lucky, which is like a concierge company, but I work there just for my studies basically, just to earn money and to just live a little bit. I stay at Airbnb because Lucky was about acquired by Airbnb at the time. And then I just end up being a neuroscientist, but still working in a field which is not linked at all with what I wanted to do. So I thought again about my idea of building something, not just being like an employee in a company and having this like smooth life, which was expected. So I'm just starting to think about one of these crazy ideas. And when I started to work, I just figured out that the biggest problem was basically in front of me, is that no one, or just a few people I've worked with in all of the companies I've worked on, enjoy their work experience. And at the end, it has like a real impact, on how they are living, how they are feeling, their stress, etc. So I've decided to build just Think Confluent to help them solve this problem. That's the story behind it, basically. Yeah.
So the problem that you noticed, yes, the problem that you really noticed was you wanted people to enjoy the work experience, right? And connect with that. And so
exactly, enjoy and I just figure out that when you are at work, most of the time it's a little bit dehumanizing, You have the worker and you have the human on the other side. And from my background, people always told me that, that's the way it is. That's how works, how the work environment is. You have to adapt. If you are not happy, that's your problem. If you are stressed, that's your problem. If you have family issue because of work, that's your problem, And I had like this, maybe naive, but really wanted to solve this one because we are working until the end of our adulthood, maybe something like that. So definitely had to solve this problem.
Yeah. And so, you said that you had 2 other startups that didn't quite make it. What were those startups? Were those startups still in the same challenge? Tell me a little bit about, what those are about and kind of what that experience was like.
Yeah. So the first one isn't really like a startup. It was a consulting agency for business leaders, where we explain like a neuroscience concept to help managers basically manage their team, taking into account their the psychological side, etc. It was a moment where everyone was talking about neuroscience everywhere for basically nothing, just putting like the neuro word everywhere.
Yeah.
It was really frustrating for me. I think I had like an ego problem at this time. So I was like, okay, I definitely have to make something which is true, not just sending vague concept about neuroscience and management, but helping people the right way. But I just figured out that the consulting agency model wasn't something for me, because most of the time, at least in my sector, in the sector I was working on, people are listening to what you're telling them. You're explaining them how to do it the right way, how to apply the concept to their team, etc. But it's really hard to have a follow-on and to follow up how they are doing. It was pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
So I've decided to stop this first idea, and then still around like how to improve work. We have built with my co-founder. It was a matching tool for freelance in the health tech, basically. So if you want it to be like a remote freelance, but with more like engineer in the health sector, and you wanted to have like a position where, you're not stuck in one company, etc. Within matching tool, but definitely the marketplace model wasn't for us, to be honest. It was just too overwhelming, and at one point we just figured out that it was too low. We aren't really patient sometimes. But we just take a few time thinking about the problem we wanted to solve, and we decided just after that to jump on Think Confluent, basically.
So essentially, your first 2 startups, one consulting agency around it, realized that people weren't really listening or hearing what you were saying. They're listening, but they weren't acting. So then it was, okay, let's build a marketplace. Let's still try to do something similar, but let's build a marketplace. Let's check this to a marketplace approach. Was overwhelming. It wasn't the right fit. So you're still same problem, same solution. Yeah. Now we're taking it to a more B2B platform style, right? So talk to me a little about what is Think Confluent and what are you actually building with Think Confluent?
So now Think Confluent is a SaaS where we help managers build a sustainable remote culture by focusing on every single employee's needs and feeling, basically. But at the beginning, it wasn't that at all. At the beginning, to be honest, it was basically a copycat of classical employee engagement software where we just put the name neuroscience somewhere on the action plans, but nothing else. And I think that's one of the moments we met together where we thought we had something really like a new, innovative product, but that wasn't the case at all. Yeah. Since the beginning, we still wanted to improve the management, taking into account the human side, helping people feel good in their companies, being involved, etc. But we had like a totally different approach. At this time, the software was something like classical surveys, classical action plans. But when we did the test, we just figured out that the survey part definitely everybody hates them. At the end, no one would answer, and I totally get it. Yeah. But yeah, that's the moment where we just pivoted a little bit.
Yeah, well, and also, the NPS scoring, right? These surveys, you scale 1 to 5, right? And depending on all the things, like it could have been a great session, but you got yelled at before you went into the session, and you give it a 3 because like you just weren't engaged. And so, like from a trainer perspective, like you get a 3. Well, is that 3 really meaningful? Like, what are the average scores, right? And if you get 100 scores and 96 of them are 4.5 or better, then you have like 2 2s and 2 3s. Like the average score goes from a 4.95 to a 4, really quickly, or a 3.98. It's like, wait, is this really effective? And, you have to go beyond the data to look at it. So sometimes that's not always proper, I guess, the right way. So, with your software, right, we were talking a little bit pre-show, how is it unique? Like what makes the Think Confluent software unique and really evaluating how somebody feels versus a classical survey?
Yeah. So now we really focus on the personalization. We figure out that everyone has a different work experience, especially in remote. So you can do this one-size-fits-all strategy. It's definitely not possible. So now basically people can send the feedback they want. They can write what they feel about their week. We're basically evaluating their week in 4 points to relationship, productivity, mental workload, and work-life balance. And they can just basically talk about what happened, with their own words. And then our algorithm and our AI is basically summarizing, extracting the right information to generate a digest for the manager. Mm-hmm. And at the end, the most important for us, in remote, you must be autonomous. The autonomy is really important. So mm-hmm. we are generating action plan, but custom action plan, not action plans which are coming from a bank where we just pick up basically randomly. But we are generating action plans based on your feedback. So if, for example, you say that you have a hard time managing your children and work at the end of the week and you feel very overwhelmed and you give all the detail you want, we generate an action plan for you, which is how to manage children and work at the end of the week while being super stressed, Really want to make something custom made. And that's the mm-hmm. biggest difference with what we had before. And that's what makes us a pretty unique software.
Yeah.
So good to say that.
I love that. And I think, an important lesson here is, okay, we have 3 different stages of this, right? Let's go consulting, marketplace, and to where we are today, right? 2 years ago, it was kind of a collection of stuff from what others were doing to, no, we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach. We can't go to this wide market and say, let's be another competitor in this space doing the same thing everyone else is doing. right? The
Yeah.
thing is that you noticed over the last couple of years that you had to get niche, right? I ask founders this all the time. It's money made in depth or width, right? It's always, you got to go deep, then wide, like roots of a tree, right? And yes, you got to test wide to find where that niche is, but you need to start circling into finding a niche and starting there. And then once you own that niche, you go to the next and the next. And that was something that, frankly, you've had a challenge over the last 2 years. We were talking pre-show, and from when we talked, and in fact, to give a little context to the listeners, when Sarah and I originally talked, it was about potentially opening up the US market and looking at some other different market opportunities. And I remember that the key thing that, you know, Sarah and her co-founder Nicholas, they were talking, realized we're not ready. I mean, we could go, we have a viable product, but we're like everybody else. We're not unique. We need to take some time to really step back and create our essence of who we are. So tell me about that journey, right? So the last 2 years, you have been testing a lot to create this customization, to create this AI algorithm, to create the way this runs for remote teams, which is even more important now than ever after the pandemic. So tell me about that process. What were the challenges of all this testing, and how did you go about product market fit over the last 2 years? Tell us about that.
I think the first phase, and I think it's the most important one, is that at one point or another, we had to face the fact that we were in the wrong path, you know, just admitting it and just talking to each other and saying, we can do that, you know, that's not possible. We have exactly the same software. We don't bring any more value. We are not really solving the problem. In our instinct, we just had to follow our instinct for this point. I think that's the hardest, because you're just feeling like, I just messed everything. I'm a failure. I can do that. You know, I think that was the first point and the most important one. Then we did like a lot of testing about what's the problem with this kind of software and why you have this kind of thousands of different software in the market all doing the same. How is it possible? And why do people have such a bad opinion about them? And we just figured out that 99% basically of the software has exactly the same process. 1 to 5 scale survey, sometimes emojis, which is even worse. And just having like action plans, random action plans saying, do meditation to feel good, even if you are like almost in burnout, you know? We wanted to just figure out what was the problem with that. So we did testing with hundreds of people. We talked to hundreds of HR managers and employees. First and foremost, they are the end users. And we just figured out that the way we are asking people to collect their feedback, so this 1 to 5 scale surveys, that's the main problem right now. Because you are in front of employees. Sometimes they don't really feel good. Sometimes they are almost in burnout. They don't feel heard, etc. And what their manager is telling them is, to give your opinion, just rate it on a 1 to 5 scale. Put just a number. But people, you know, work way more than numbers. So we spent a long time just figuring out how we can replace this survey thing.
Yeah.
And we just faced a real problem because we are not technical person at the beginning. We are not software developers. So we definitely had to make, to improve with the tool on the market, you know. And we have discovered the GPT-3, which is basically helping solve our top one problem. That's the base. It's not everything. But at the end, it helps us analyze this written feedback. And at this point, it was way better. Way better, definitely.
So taking a step back, you know, let's look at challenges of entrepreneurship here. The first and hardest thing for entrepreneurs is usually look in the mirror, right? Hey, we've spent, and probably even harder for you because you and your co-founder, you tried 2 other ways to solve this problem. There's the consultancy and the marketplace. We've been trying to solve this problem for years, right? We're looking like 2 years of just Think Confluent, years of the other businesses. And it was finally stepping and looking in the mirror and saying, hey, we're not actually solving the problem we're setting out to. That's a big realization, right? we think, and this happens a lot in entrepreneurship, we find a pain that we want to solve, and we start building a solution. And we forget to do along the way, we forget to talk to our customers. We forget to ask why.
Exactly.
And so the second key point was, okay, let's step back. Let's go interview hundreds of HR managers, consultants, et cetera, in this space. Let's go talk to the end users. What do they want? What is the issues with the current solution on the market? Because it's true, when you fill out a 1 to 3, I mean, shit, I could have gotten in a fight with my wife before I did a training or took a survey. And of course I'm not engaged. Like, I'm not going to be able to give my right thoughts. There's outside stress factors in a number. Been able to write hey, sorry, wasn't able to really absorb all of this because of XYZ factors, or it's been super challenging. And we always say you raise a complaint or talk to HR, you have your voices heard, but when it's numbers, we don't feel like it's ever heard. No one actually ever fixed the things that make us miss out on things, right? And so to be able to do that, I think is such a big, unique point. And the two things is, one, admitting that when you haven't set out to do what you're doing, we're not solving the problem we set out to. And then remembering to go back to the customer. Hey, somewhere along this way of solving this problem, we got lost. Let's go back to basics, right? Let's go back to the bare necessities. What does the customer want? What do they need, right? And there's a difference between wants and need. We want $1 million. We need a job, right? So you got to think the want versus need. And you went back to figuring out the need. So you go on this journey, right? You talk to hundreds of people. You find the software, the GPT-3 powered software. What's been some of, as you figure out, okay, we have product market fit. How have you validated that? So do you have clients? Have you gotten some pilots running? Like, tell me a little bit about, you did the product market fit. Now let's talk about market validation. What have you done to validate your solution for the market?
Yeah, so we did basically 15 pilots with teams, companies, small ones most of the time. It was way easier for us to test with like different kind of users, basically. And what we saw was that we made like basically a comparison between our previous software and the one we have now. On the previous one, you had like basically a vicious circle. If you don't put the right number on your well-being, you put random number, you have random data, so you don't know how to act. So nothing is improved. So people don't want to give their opinion on your 1 to 5 scale survey,
Yeah.
Now with our software, you really have like this virtuous circle, the opposite. You give your feedback. Managers can really know what's the problem, so they can act, so they can improve. You see that your manager is improving your condition, your work experience. So you are keen, to give more feedback, and then everything is going in a way positive well, basically. That's what we figure out. And it took us like a little bit of time, but at the end we are coming to it. So yeah, that's what we did.
I love that. So 15 pilots to really test. And I love it. It's not just testing that this works. It's testing against the old software. So it's, and like I said, vicious circle versus virtuous circle, right? One that doesn't allow us to actually grow anywhere, so it just dies out, to one where we can actually provide good feedback and it runs us through with action plans, which allows us to want to do more, right? Because if we're getting good feedback and we're getting action that help us grow, we're going to be more likely to want to say, hey, here's my next problem. And especially in a remote environment, as we all have learned to work remote, it's not easy balancing. I like getting out and going to the office from time to time, even though, the train's going to get stuck, whatever. I feed off that energy, and, I do get distracted, the laundry, the PlayStation, et cetera. It's really easy to be, man, I'm not feeling it today. Let me just go do this for like 30 minutes. And then 3 hours later, you're like, I haven't done anything today, right? So things like that happen. So I think this is really, really cool. It's really important, right, to step and learn. So
Exactly.
as
Exactly.
as you sit here, 15 pilots, you spent 2 years, you validated the product, so you found product market fit. It's now validated against 15 pilots. Where do you go from here? What's next? What's the next challenge that Think Confluent is taking on in your entrepreneurial journey as you really look to scale?
Yeah. So our next challenge, basically, we have everything to do. We definitely still have everything to do, but our next goal for the end of the year will be to launch like this public beta thing, because we still have, to improve the algorithm to make something super personalized.
Mm-hmm.
So making it public and building our core team. Because the go-to-market strategy, for example, for us will be the key, because we are in a very competitive sector. So really building a strong team around marketing, building community, targeting employees, and not only managers or HR will be really our next challenge. Definitely.
Yeah. So with this public beta, when do you think that the public beta is going to be launched?
I don't give like any precise date, but hopefully early October.
All right.
Finger crossed on that.
Early October. Well, I want to challenge you something, and there's a guest on here, Larry Long Jr. is talking about a moment he had with one of his mentors about he had a book coming out, and the guy was like, Larry, when is your book coming out? Oh, sometime in 2022. And he's like, Larry, that's not a date. When is your book coming out? The reason behind it is it's easy to like push back, right? When you set a date, you work harder. So, I'm gonna say early October, October 10th. I'm gonna follow up with you and see where it's at if we get that public beta out.
No, it is.
So Bear Nation, let's hold Sarah and team accountable for early October. No, I love it, right? And it's important to get that public beta out, right? And get it right, because the key here is we need to improve the algorithm. And to do that, we need data. And so we need users that will test. And so do you have a wait list set up? Are you working on getting, okay. So anybody out there that's interested in testing, there's a wait list. How do they get on a wait list?
How do they get on the wait list, you tell me?
Yeah. So if anyone from Bear Nation wants to test this out, how do they get on the wait list to be a part of the public beta when it comes out?
Yeah, of course. So on a website, basically you just have a subscription button. You can just put your name, first name, email, companies, and then we contact you. We are now in closed private beta. So we are also onboarding people from our waitlist, because we still have a waitlist, even if it's not public. And we react very fastly. Just sending your contact and we'll contact back.
I'll make sure to put the website in the show notes, and the reason behind is Bear Nation's very active and engaged with the guests, and we have a lot of folks who are managing remote teams, so it could be interesting. So you talked about the challenges. We have the public beta launch, and then the space is very competitive, so bringing on the right team. How do you plan on doing that? What is your thought process on growing your team? Are you hiring now? Are you looking for funding to hire? Like, what's your growth plan for team growth?
Yeah. So first, we are looking for a fund. We want to raise a pre-seed. Right now, we currently have like a business angel committed. We are looking to close our round, hopefully as soon as possible. And with this fundraising, we plan really to focus on hiring, marketing, sales, and the beginning of a software development team. We definitely need people to build that, because the market is super competitive, and we really have to make something unique. We have to differentiate from all these thousands of the software in the market. So it will be the key.
So that's exciting. In a pre-seed pre-seed funding round right now, and you said you have a business angel already committed, so you're looking to close out the round. You're looking to close out in the next few months, by the end of the year. What's the target goal for closing out that round?
Before the end of like July, mid-August. So as soon as possible.
Yeah. I love to hear it.
In the next few weeks.
Yeah, I love that. And the reason I ask is, so many people think about raising, right? And so what's it been like, if you don't mind, what are some of the challenges that you've had in the raise process? I mean, What's that process been like for you? Do you have a whole strategy for outreach? Is it coming in? Is it a combination? Tell me a little about this challenge of fundraising. I've done it myself, and it's not easy. So let's talk about this challenge.
Yeah. So fundraising is like one more of our challenge because basically we have to learn everything,
Yeah.
how to fundraise, how to present, how to pitch, etc. We are in the coming from like this business background. So everything we do, we have to learn it before. Or the way we are contacting investors, it's basically a mix between warm introduction, investors who contact us, and cold outreach from our side. Basically, it's working pretty well. Pretty sure because we are like tackling, the remote work. So that's pretty trendy these days, and there's definitely something to do in this space.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that I think I like investors call.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I really like just talking about my product, chatting with people, having their point of view about it. And every time I'm closing like a call with an investor, I'm always happy, even if it's a no, basically.
Yeah.
I'm always happy with that. So yeah, it's going pretty well, but still need to close the round, so
Yeah.
it's not totally positive.
Yeah, well, I mean, every no it gets closer to a yes, right? And so it's important,
Yeah.
when we think about fundraising, right, and entrepreneurship itself, right? Airbnb, Uber, give a pitch, they got tons of funding and they launch a company. That's not how this works anymore, right? And in order to get funding, you have to show traction, you have to show scalability, you have to show market validation, you have to show product market fit, all these things. And so having a strong strategy, okay, hey, here's a list of angels or investors that we think would be a good fit. These are the ones that we've seen historically invest in this type of product, right? Some investors will invest in B2C, some B2B. We think Confluent, we're thinking neuroscience is future of work, no code. When we think about these spaces, not everyone wants to invest in that. So putting those lists together and then looking at general funds. And it's important to really diversify and having those target list of like, these are the 20 that invest in us and types of companies. Here's that 50 that might invest in us. And then here's another 20 to 30 that probably won't, but B2B worth reaching out to. And then you test from the bottom to get closer, right? So you can refine your pitch, refine the way you have a conversation. And so many of us think, I'm just going to get investment. It's going to be easy. I'm going to ask somebody to introduce me to an investor and they're going to see the value. And a couple of things that you've brought up a lot is this space is very competitive, right? So many founders that I talk to show me their total addressable market, and it's like, this is the total addressable market. It's $2 billion. We're going to get 2% in the next 2 years and make $5 million. I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because it's like, if you look at the competitor page, there's nothing. Like 2 competitors, we're unique. This is this. We're going to be, it's going to take you 5 or 6 years to get to that level, to get to even 2%. Stop acting like there's no competition. When you accept and understand that globally or in any market you're in, there's competition and you know exactly what that competition is and you pay attention, you have a better chance to actually go be relevant, right? And investors see that. They want to know, do you really understand the market? Do you really understand? Do you have a plan?
Exactly.
Hey, this is a competitive ass market. There's 40 competitors. Here's how we're unique. Here's how we're going to change the game. Here's how we're going to go compete. Here's the 1-year plan. Here's the 2-year plan. Here's the 5-year plan. But guess what? That 5-year plan is probably never going to work out because so much is going to happen in the first 2 years that we're going to switch it up anyways. When you start having those conversations with investors, that's where the real shit comes. And I love that you bring that up and that you love that you get to talk to all these investors and talk and chat and hear feedback because all that does is it gives you more validation you're on the right track and where you need to make small changes to grow the business and go the right direction.
Exactly. You definitely have to be realistic about your business, your market, because if you're not, at the beginning, you will take like the wrong decision because the fact that the market is overcrowded or not means that you will have to adapt your go-to-market strategy. It means that you will have to adapt your product, that maybe you will have to tackle one market or another, and being realistic about that since the beginning, I think that's really the key. Even if it's hard, to admit you're like, okay, you always want to be like the first one on the market or building a new market or whatever. But at one point or another, when you are building software like mine, or basically 99% of B2B software these days, you have competitors in one way or another, So definitely you have to think about it since the beginning.
Oh, and I love this because this is something that so many entrepreneurs fail to do. Be realistic from the start, right? Sarah's already shared with us that they went away from solving the problem they were trying to solve. And when they reevaluated and really got back to being realistic on the problem they're solving and getting customer survey feedback to really validate what the problem is, that's when things started changing for Think Confluent. That's why over the last 2 years, they've continued to put things in the right direction, and they have commitment from a business angel. They have 15 pilots. They have a wait list for the public beta. Not because it's by chance and they just have a good product in a good market. No, it's a good product in a very fucking competitive market. They're realistic. They took a step back and they put all the work in. And Sarah, you'll know this because you've sat through a few of my workshops. It's one of the books I always talk about that I remembered getting told it's called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Right? And there's like 10 chapters. It's really easy. Right? Number one, steal like an artist. Don't wait until you know who you are to get started. Write the book you want to read. Use your hand. The secret, do good work and share with people. Right? When you start looking at these lessons and, those that are, listening in that don't watch this on YouTube, you can't see. There's a lot of pictures in this book. And the whole point of this is saying that so many things in life have already been developed and executed, and there's things that work. Why try to reinvent the wheel? Look at what works. Look at your competition. Be realistic. Understand what your competition is doing. Take the things that you like. Figure out how to make it your own. Brand it. Make it your own. Use it as your strategy. And the things that you think that you don't like. Yeah, everyone wants to be first mover on the market, but there's value to being the second, third competitor on the market. You get to learn, right? First mover advantage versus, second mover. So I think it's really important to understand where you are and stop trying to act like you're building a new market when you're not.
Yeah,
the more realistic we can be, the more thoughtful we can be about growing our business, which is something you have shown through what Think Confluent has built. So, I went on a tangent there, but I think it's too important not to share. When we think about the bare necessities of entrepreneurship, it's so easy to not be realistic with yourself and start thinking that it's special. And it doesn't have to be. You can you can build a business this way.
Totally, but it's hard, because often when you are a founder, you have this ego where it's hard to admit failure. You always see like on social media, on TechCrunch, whatever, XYZ people raise XYZ amount of money, like 100% growth, really crazy numbers. And you don't want to waste time first. And secondly, you don't want to be the one who fails. So sometimes it's easier, just to lie to yourself than acting and sitting down, being like, okay, this thing, now it's not the right way to do it. I failed this point, I have to improve. But I think that's definitely the hardest. It's a mix of ego, not wasting time, wanting to be the first, etc. And I think that's, recognizing this point will make people maybe succeed a little bit more. Definitely.
I mean, the ego thing is real, and imposter syndrome is real, and I get it. I get it. I mean, I've worked for startups, I work with startups, I founded businesses. I get it. As a speaker and personality, I get it. And the quicker you can get over the fact that you don't have to, you write the story you want to read, right? You don't have to write your story as somebody else's. If that takes you a few extra years, that takes you a few extra years. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't rush into something. And also, I think because of our egos, we jump too quickly to that we failed and we give up on things that, you could have given up on Think Confluent as your third chance at solving this problem and be like, we're wrong. Let's figure something else out. Instead, it's like, no. We got this. We can still do this. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I think getting over the ego, understanding that it's time, energy, work, and effort put in, that's where you win. So I love that you shared that. It's so, I think, such a clutch piece of information because so many entrepreneurs go through this and no one wants to talk about it. We want it to be Instagram perfect. Or millennials and Gen Z, hyper connected.
It works.
It is not the way it works.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also why sometimes the ecosystem is really hard and mentally about like the mental health, founders' mental health. I think that's one of the problems. You don't want to show that you are not doing the right thing. You don't want to show that you are failing sometimes, that maybe it takes you like 10 times to do one thing and the other one down it like in a week, you know. But exactly as you say, that's your experience, that's your company, that's your journey, and you are the one who is living it, you know. So just focus on yourself, listen a little bit others, but focus on how your business. That's all. I think that's important.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I can't like give enough exclamation points to that point about focusing on you and focusing on your growth. Because part of things that, something that we talk about all the time and people hear it, right? That failure is where growth happens. And that you have to look at failure differently, right? Because you can fail and you can choose to just, I failed and walk away. Okay. That's the negative side of failure. Or you can fail and say, what did I miss? Where do I learn a lesson? Right. And if you can learn from failure, that is where progress happens. That's where real growth happens. And you can't ever build something without failing. Like every major company, Uber, Airbnb, they failed at something. They messed something up, but we just don't care about it because the story sounds all glitz and glam, and entrepreneurship isn't that. And that's the whole point of the Bare Necessities, right? That's the whole point of looking in the mirror and building a business the way that, Sarah and Nicholas from Think Confluent have done. So I loved it. I've enjoyed our conversation. I know we're getting close to end of time here. So, I want to kind of hit you with, if you know from listening to the show, which I know Sarah has, because she told me she has, there's a few questions that I like to always ask. Right? So first, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit on this episode. What do you think your superpower is?
I remember. So definitely, I think my superpower is that I learn very fast. Like, as I told you, I definitely had to learn everything to build this company. I'm really coming from very academical thing, really rational math. Everything is like very academical. And I think it gave me just this power to have like a critical mindset and to learn very fast. I'm just saying a lot of positive things about myself right now, but
no, I think that's really, it's important, right? It's important to understand where we thrive. In fact, you even said one of the challenges of this entrepreneurship thing is you had to teach yourself how to do business, how to go raise fundraising, how to engage, how to hire, how to do all these things, right? Those are things that you hadn't learned, but because you came from a very academical process, critical thinking background, you're able to leverage that to be adaptable, which is hard because sometimes those that are very academic are so process oriented, they don't know how to adapt through shades of gray, which entrepreneurship is. And having that as a superpower, understanding process and understanding critical thinking and then being able to adapt on the fly, that's huge. And that's entrepreneurship is so much. It's not like one thing or another. So I love that. What advice would you give to Gen Z or millennial entrepreneurs or anyone really that is entrepreneurial minded right now?
I think that I would say that you shouldn't put barriers, in your way. It's not because you're young that you can't build a company because you don't have enough experience. And I'm a young people, so I hope this one is true. And especially, it's not because you're a woman that you are only legitimate to build femtech products or women-oriented products or whatever. I see that a lot. Women sometimes don't feel that they are just legitimate to build something else because they feel that people think that, they only knew everything around fashion industry, parenthood, or whatever. That's not true. If you want to build something like a badass thing, let's do it. Just don't put barriers in your way. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think so highly in that, right? That when you put barriers, whether that's gender stereotypes or whatever, all you're doing is giving up into what others say, not who you really are. Be who you are. I actually talked about this not too long ago. If you don't feel like you have enough credible experience, who cares, right?
Yeah.
If you feel nervous or scared to start, who cares? Do it anyways. If you don't feel quite ready to get going, don't wait. Start doing. You need to. Time will never be perfect. No one's gonna. Not everyone you talk to is gonna validate you and say, "Oh yeah, you should do this." They're probably gonna say, "No, you're crazy. Like, go stick to what's secure. Do this." No. If it scares you, lean into it. If all these people who you think would support you are starting to tell you it's crazy, it's probably something that you should try out and lean into.
Yeah,
so I love that. I love that.
Definitely. I love when people say like, "Oh no, you won't do that. Why are you doing that? That's crazy." Yeah, I will do that like right now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, you said something. Yeah. Well, you said something to me pre-show when we were talking about, Think Confluent and, trying to change. When you think about, your intro of helping people not to compromise on what they need or who they think we are or who they think they are, right, at work. And you start thinking about that long term, that, that not putting barriers on us and really understanding that we can do whatever we want. That's how we shake up the ecosystem, right? We create the new ecosystem of thinkers and innovators and movers and shakers. And so I think that's such a crucial point. What is one book, resource, piece of content that you recommend our listeners check out right now?
Yeah. So I've discovered, and you will say that I'm pretty late, but the power of Twitter to build a company. There are basically a lot of people, especially investors from emerging funds, etc., who are publishing a lot of valuable content about how to pitch, how to send forwardable email, how to build your pitch deck, etc. Really a lot of people. So let's say Lolita Tom, Janine Sickmeyer, Gail Wilkinson, all of these people are really super valuable. Just go follow them.
Well, I love it because, Twitter's kind of making a comeback. Like, people are sleeping on Twitter, and, LinkedIn's my biggest platform, and I love LinkedIn, but, a lot of people are copying on LinkedIn, and people are, sharing watered down stuff, and it's like shouting into a void. Where, on LinkedIn, you have a lot of, or on Twitter, I mean, LinkedIn, there's still that. You gotta curate your network the right way, because, I want people to follow me and follow my content. But what's really cool about Twitter is there's a lot less noise right now. It's similar to like Clubhouse when Clubhouse started. Like, Twitter's kind of going back to being a place. They've increased the character limit. There's still a lot of amazing people on there talking about great stuff on Twitter, and there's a lot less noise in the entrepreneurship space. Now, there's a lot of noise on Twitter and other stuff, right? Depending on what you're looking for, just with any platform. But in the entrepreneurship space right now, you're not wrong. Twitter's kind of making a comeback because there's not a lot of noise, and there's a lot of good value being shared.
It really is.
And definitely, I'm a big fan of Janine Stickmeyer and Gail Wilkinson. I'm not following Lolita Top, so I'll have to do that after this.
Definitely.
So what is your lasting message to our listeners today?
My last message will be very short, but you know what you have to do. Definitely. Most of the time, you know the answer, to your problem. You have everyone has a pretty good gut instinct. Just follow it. I face this point, when we had to pivot. We knew since the beginning that the problem was this service thing, of course, but we didn't want to admit it. So just, you know what you have to do. That's my sentence. I put it everywhere.
Well, I mean, I think that makes sense, right? Listen to your instincts. Like, most of the time, they're right. If your gut's telling you something, do it. I think as you shared this, with me earlier, we hear we read a lot of it. There's a lot of contradictory information about the startup development, fundraising, et cetera, right? We just said that on LinkedIn. It's like a lot of noise, where Twitter right now is not as much noise. And you got to wade through that. But in the end, you got to be 100% you and comfortable in the decisions you are making with the company and take the company to where you want it to go. I've been there. I've been in companies where it's like, is this really what we want to be doing? Because you start losing that thought process. So I love that. Listen to your instincts. This is a great final message. Sarah, thank you. Where do my listeners find you? Where should they be looking to learn more about you and Think Confluent?
Pretty basic. Twitter, LinkedIn, Sarah Allali, definitely simple, and Think Confluent just on the website, www.thinkconfluent.com. You can definitely contact me. I answer to everyone. I'm an open person, so if you need anything, I'm here.
I love that. Well, we'll make sure to drop your Twitter, LinkedIn, and the website in the show notes so that people can find you with a click.
Yeah.
Also, if you just want to learn or talk about the future of remote work, that's Sarah's specialty. And there's a special offer for podcast listeners. They're offering 2 free months using the code TBNE2, which I'll put in there for the bare necessities of entrepreneurship. So you get 2 free months by mentioning the podcast. So I will make sure that's in the show notes as well if you want to test out. Also, they're looking for some cool beta testers and really some data. So if this is something you're really interested in the future of remote work, you want to test it out, you get 2 months free for being a listener, for being a part of Bear Nation. But also, follow Sarah. She's great. A lot of great information and conversations on the future of remote work, which is something I'm extremely passionate about. When I think about millennials and Gen Z and talk about what does the future of entrepreneurship and innovation, the future of entrepreneurship and the future of work, especially remote work, go hand in hand. So it's a topic I love to chat with, and Sarah and I have had some great conversations about. So if that's inspiring and interesting to you, connect with Sarah. As she said, she likes to talk with everybody. Sarah, thank you again. I had so much fun. Great getting to catch up with you. Appreciate you being a part of Bear Nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Rob.
Absolutely. All right, Bear Nation, until next time, stay well. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for listening to the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, take care.